I never thought betrayal could feel this quiet. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just the steady tick of my old wall clock as I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the envelope in my hands. The paper was heavy, expensive, the kind lawyers use when they want their words to carry weight. It wasn't from my lawyer. It was from his. Ethan Collins. My nephew. The kid I'd practically raised after my brother passed away. The same kid I'd pulled out of debt twice, helped through college, even gave a down payment for his first house. And now, according to this letter, he was claiming I'd promised him my lakefront property in Rockford in recognition of years of family loyalty. Family loyalty. The words rolled around in my head like a bad joke. I hadn't heard from Ethan in months, not since the last time he'd asked for money and I'd told him no. Now, it seemed, he was done asking. He'd gone straight to taking. The letter demanded I honor our verbal agreement and transfer the deed within 30 days to avoid legal action. Legal action. From my own blood. I set the paper down and leaned back, staring out the kitchen window at the frozen lake. Beyond the shoreline, the gray water rippled under a cold wind, just like it had the winter my brother died. I'd sworn then to look after Ethan, to make sure he had a chance at a decent life. And for years I had. I'd written checks when he needed them, no questions asked. Covered bills when his business ventures flopped. Paid off a car loan when the bank was about to repossess it. I'd done it because I believed in him, or maybe because I wanted to believe. But people show you who they are when they think you have nothing left to give. I picked up my phone and called Leonard Hayes, my lawyer of 20 years. His voice was calm as always. Bring the letter in tomorrow morning. We'll go over it. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the little moments over the years, the Christmases when Ethan never brought a gift, not even a card, the birthdays he skipped, the times he'd laughed off paying me back with a casual, "You've got plenty." By morning, the anger had cooled into something sharper. Leonard read the letter twice, then looked at me over his glasses. This is nothing more than an intimidation play. He has no legal claim to your property unless there's a written agreement. Which I assume there isn't. There isn't, I said flatly. Then he's bluffing. Maybe, I said. But I'm not going to just block his call and hope he gets bored. He wants to play games? Fine. I'll show him what the board looks like. Leonard's brow lifted. You're thinking countermove? I'm thinking, I said slowly. It's time to make sure he understands that coming after me has consequences. I didn't tell Leonard my full plan yet, partly because I hadn't decided exactly how far I'd go, and partly because I didn't want him to talk me down. That afternoon, I drove past Ethan's so-called construction company on Pine Street. The yard was a mess, rusting machinery, a half-built shed, piles of materials covered in snow. No sign of work being done, but there were other signs, like the brand-new truck in the parking lot, gleaming under a layer of salt spray. Or the for sale sign leaning against the wall inside the office. I knew enough about his finances to guess what was happening. The debts were piling up, and the truck wasn't bought with cash. He was cornered, and desperate men make stupid moves. I also knew one other thing. Desperation works both ways. That night, I started a new file on my desk. I labeled it simply, EC inside. I put the letter. Then I began making a list, every debt I knew about, every shady deal he bragged about over beer, every time he'd skirted a permit or forgotten to file taxes. It was going to take time to turn this list into leverage. But I had something Ethan didn't, patience. And when the time came, I'd make sure he wished he'd never tried to put his hands on what was mine. The next morning, I was up before sunrise, coffee in hand, staring at the manila folder on my desk. The cold outside made the windows fog, but my mind was clear. Every name, every number, every scrap of information I'd written the night before felt like the start of a roadmap. I wasn't going to confront Ethan head-on. That would give him control. Instead, I'd move slow, quiet. Let him think nothing was happening, right up until the ground gave way beneath his feet. Step 1, information. I started with the county records. The clerk's office in Ridgeview is a squat brick building that smells faintly of old paper and radiator heat. I'd been there before for property tax records, but this time I was looking for something else: permits, liens, ownership transfers. Anything with Ethan's name on it. It didn't take long. 3 outstanding property tax bills on a lot he'd bought last year. 2 citations from the city inspector for unsafe building practices. And 1 contractor's license renewal that was still pending after 6 months, a red flag that often meant trouble. I paid the clerk a small fee for certified copies. She didn't ask why. Step 2. Whispers. In a small town, you don't have to look far to hear what people say when they think no one's listening. I stopped by Franklin's Hardware, where Ethan had a running account. The owner, George, has known me since I was a kid. I asked about a new saw blade, but it didn't take long for the conversation to drift. Your nephew's been slow on payments again, George said, shaking his head. Last month, he put down a credit card that bounced. Claimed it was some bank error. Yeah, I murmured, he's been busy. George snorted. Busy, sure. Mostly buying fancy lunches at McGowan's Grill. The picture was getting clearer. Ethan was drowning, but still living like he wasn't. Step 3. Paper trails. That afternoon, I drove out to a self-storage facility on the edge of town. Not because Ethan rented there, but because I knew the owner, Larry. And Larry had mentioned, months back, that Ethan had asked about short-term storage for business materials. Larry confirmed it, Unit 17V, paid for in cash every month. I didn't ask what was in it, not yet, but I wrote it down in my file. By the end of the week, I had a stack of evidence thick enough to tell me 2 things. Ethan's business was barely holding together, and he was playing a dangerous game to keep it looking legitimate. And that's when the idea started to form, not just to defend myself, but to turn his own habits against him. It would start with a single domino. On Friday evening, I parked across from his office after dark. The windows were lit, and through the blinds I saw him pacing with a phone pressed to his ear. He didn't see me, but I saw enough to know he was rattled, hand gesture sharp, face tight. I didn't go inside. Not yet. Instead, I drove home, pulled out my folder, and made a new page titled Contacts. Under it, I wrote the names of everyone I knew he owed, officially or unofficially. I wasn't going to tell them to act. I was just going to give them the right nudge at the right moment. By the time I turned off my desk lamp that night, I realized something. This wasn't about the property anymore. This was about making sure Ethan understood, in a way he couldn't ignore, that the cost of crossing me was higher than he ever imagined. And soon, the first bill would come due. By Monday morning, my plan was more than just a list in a folder. It was a loaded spring. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to storm into Ethan's office waving papers. The right pressure in the right places would do the work for me. The first push was to the Ridgeview Licensing Board. I'd spotted that pending contractor's license renewal in the county records, and I knew how slowly these offices moved unless you gave them a reason to speed up. I called, polite as a Sunday school teacher, asking hypothetical questions about whether a contractor with an expired renewal could legally take deposits and pull permits. I even mentioned I was concerned for my daughter without naming names. The woman on the other end went quiet. I could hear her typing, clicking, breathing just a little heavier. When she finally spoke, her tone had changed. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Mr. Cole," I said. "Clark Cole." I hung up feeling nothing like joy. This wasn't about feeling good. It was about setting something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Next came Franklin's Hardware. George, the owner, has known me since I was a boy sweeping sawdust for pocket change. I bought the saw blade I'd been pretending to shop for, and as I signed the slip I spoke just loud enough for the 2 contractors in line to hear. "George, if a contractor's account keeps bouncing, you can put them on cash-only terms. Protects everyone." George nodded. "Might do that. Been thinking about it." I didn't need to see who was texting in the corner. I knew word would get to the right ears by nightfall. By lunch, I'd sent a few carefully chosen emails. One to the city inspector who'd cited Ethan's crew for unsafe framing last year. One to the property manager at Lakeside, where Ethan bragged about doing 7 kitchen remodels at once. And one to Nora, who ran the Ridgeview Homeowners Forum like it was her personal courthouse. I attached documents, all public record, and asked simple questions about procedure. By mid-afternoon, the forum exploded. A post from Riverbirch showed photos of a gutted bathroom with the caption, "Contractor vanished, deposit gone, license expired." Nora dropped my PDFs into the comments like matches into dry grass. Others chimed in, same story, different jobs. I didn't say a word. That's the thing about truth. If you give it room, it will start running on its own. The licensing board called back at 3:05. "Mr. Cole, your inquiry prompted a review. We've issued a temporary stop work order on Mr. Ethan Hale's projects until the renewal is resolved." I thanked them and hung up. My pulse was steady. Curiosity pulled me past his office later that day. Through the blinds, I saw him pacing with his phone, gestures sharp, mouth tight. Two of his workers stood outside, arguing over a clipboard. Then a white city truck pulled up. The inspector, Harlan, stepped out. Heavy-set, steady, not a man you can sweet-talk. He posted an orange notice on the glass. Ethan's laugh turned to shouting, then to a small, resigned nod. One domino. I started a new page in my folder, Benders. Ethan's image depended on others' patience, granite yards, tile suppliers, lumber yards. Without that patience, the image would collapse. My call to Mendelstone at the granite yard was casual. I asked about prices, then mentioned, almost offhand, that some contractors were about to be hit with stop work orders. "You don't want your slab stuck on a job site you can't get paid for," I said. Silence. Then, "Hale." "I didn't say that," I replied. "You didn't have to." By the next morning, the second domino fell. The bank, my old bank, froze Ethan's business account after multiple returned payments. Payroll wouldn't go through on Friday. I didn't make that call. I just knew where the pressure points were. Around noon, my phone lit up. "Tessa." "Dad, something's happening to Ethan's jobs. The city shut him down. He says it's a mistake, that people are out to ruin him. He says it's old bankers who hate change. Have you seen the notice yourself?" I asked. She rustled papers. Big orange sheet on the door. "And a guy from the stone place came this morning to take back countertops." Her voice dropped. He punched the pantry door last night." I sat still for a moment. "Tessa, you make a list of every bill with your name on it, not his, and send it to me. And if he raises his voice or his hands again, you go straight to Pastor Williams or the station. You'll be safe before lunch." "Okay," she whispered. When we hung up, I added a final page to the folder, safety. That night, I watched from the motel window as Ethan stood in his office alone, elbows on the desk, head in his hands. The orange paper on the glass fluttered in the wind. My phone buzzed twice. "You think this is funny, old man? I know where you are." I forwarded the messages to Detective Morales and put my phone down. The first 3 dominoes had fallen. The next ones, they'd hit even harder. By the time Thursday rolled around, I could feel the shift in the air. People in Ridgeview aren't subtle when someone's fortunes start to crack. They look twice when you walk past. Conversations dip in volume when you step into a shop. And if the town's gossip queen, Nora from the Ridgeview Homeowners Forum, starts showing up at your job sites with her phone out, you can bet the fall is already underway. Ethan must have felt it too. That morning, I was having coffee at Kelly's diner when his truck roared up outside. I heard the door slam before I saw him. He came in fast, scanning the room like a man looking for a fight. When his eyes locked on me, the noise of the diner faded into a kind of tight, pressurized silence. "Morning, Ethan," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it. He leaned on the table, close enough that I could smell the stress on him, that sharp mix of coffee, sweat, and something sour. "You think you're clever, Clark? You think I don't know you've been making calls?" I didn't blink. "I make a lot of calls. To friends. To people I trust." His jaw worked like he was chewing gravel. "You're ruining my business." I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not ruining anything, Ethan. I'm just not holding it up anymore." For a second, I thought he might swing at me right there in front of half the town. But he just pushed off the table and left without another word, shoving the door so hard the glass rattled. The waitress, Bev, came over with the coffee pot. "He's wound tighter than barbed wire," she muttered. "You be careful, Clark." I nodded but didn't answer. Careful was all I'd been. That afternoon, I made my next move. I called Jim Porter, who runs the largest lumber supply in the county. Jim's no fool. He extends credit only to people he knows will pay. I mentioned, offhand, that Ethan's stop work order might cause delays on his current accounts. By sundown, Ethan's credit line was suspended. 2 hours later, a text came through from Tessa. He's in the garage screaming on the phone. Said someone froze his accounts. He's blaming you. I typed back, stay inside. Lock the doors. I'll check in later. Then I called Detective Morales. She and I had gone to high school together. She knew my voice before I even gave my name. I told her about the threatening texts Ethan had sent. She didn't hesitate. Send them over. We'll log them. If he steps over the line, we'll move fast. That night, the wind off the lake cut through my jacket as I walked back to the motel. Ethan's truck wasn't at his office, but his lights were still on, and a pile of mail sat untouched in the doorway. The folder on my desk was thicker now, pages of records, photos, printouts from public forums. And a new page at the back, press. Because the next step wasn't just about tightening the screws. It was about making sure everyone saw them turn. I sent a short email to a local reporter at the Ridgeview Gazette. Tip: unlicensed contractor under stop work order leaves homeowners stranded. Multiple complaints filed. Public records attached. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. By Friday morning, the headline was live. And by Friday afternoon, Ethan's name was all over town, not as the young entrepreneur he liked to pretend he was, but as a man with a business on the brink, debts circling like vultures, and the law at his heels. But I wasn't done. The dominoes were still falling, and the biggest one was yet to tip. By the time the Gazette piece had been shared 20 times on the Ridgeview Homeowners Forum, Ethan wasn't just fighting to keep his business, he was fighting to keep his image. And in a town like ours, once the image cracks, it doesn't matter what the truth is. People decide what's real based on the whispers they hear in line at the post office. That Friday evening, I parked across from his office again. The once busy lot was empty except for his truck and a half-loaded trailer. Through the blinds, I could see him sitting at his desk, not moving, just staring at something on the computer screen. I knew that look. It's the same one I'd seen on my own face in the mirror the day the bank had sent me foreclosure papers on my first shop. The look of a man realizing the ground is giving way. The phone in my pocket buzzed. Tessa. He's drinking again, she said, her voice small. He keeps saying someone's trying to ruin him and that I'm in on it because I'm not defending him. Are you safe? I asked. She hesitated. For now wasn't good enough. After we hung up, I called Detective Morales again. I told her about the drinking, the accusations, the way Tessa sounded. She listened without interrupting. Clark, you need to make sure she's somewhere else for a while. Tonight, if possible. If he's this wound up, it could go bad quick. That was already in motion. I'd spoken to Pastor Williams earlier in the week. He'd offered a spare room in the church's parsonage. I just needed Tessa to agree to it. But before I made that call, I had one more stop to make. It was late, but the self-storage place was still open. Larry, the owner, greeted me with his usual slow nod. I asked about Unit 17B, Ethan's unit, and Larry leaned in, lowering his voice. He's behind on rent. 2 months. I can cut the lock next week if he doesn't pay. What happens to what's inside? Goes to auction. Public. I thanked him, and as I walked out, I could already see the headline in my mind, foreclosed contractors' tools and materials up for public sale. Whether those tools were paid for or not, the damage to his reputation would be final. The next morning, I called Tessa early. You need to pack a bag, I told her. Take only what's yours. Pastor Williams will come get you. She didn't argue. Maybe she finally saw through him, or maybe she was just tired of the yelling. Either way, by mid-afternoon she was in the church's guest room, safe and away from his reach. Ethan noticed within the hour. My phone lit up with a series of texts, each one more unhinged than the last. You took her from me. You think you can embarrass me? You have no idea who you're messing with. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded them to Morales, who replied with a short, steady line. Good. Keep him talking. That night, I drove past his place again. Lights blazed in every window. The trailer was gone, replaced by a heap of broken pallets and scrap wood in the driveway. And on the curb, stacked in the cold under a thin tarp, were what looked like 3 kitchen countertop slabs, the kind you don't leave outside unless you've given up on finishing the job. He was slipping. Fast. And I was just getting ready to give him the final shove. Because the last domino wasn't going to fall quietly. It was going to make noise loud enough for the whole town to hear. I woke before dawn, staring at the ceiling like it might answer for everything that had happened. My coffee went cold on the table while I sat there, thinking about those countertop slabs stacked on Ethan's curb, big, heavy symbols of a man's unraveling. By the time the sun came up, I had my day mapped out. Today wasn't about gathering information. It was about putting pressure on the last week joints until something snapped. First stop was the Ridgeview Licensing Board. I didn't walk in like a man making a complaint. I walked in like someone delivering bad news wrapped in a bow. I gave the clerk my folder, contracts, invoices, text messages from homeowners who'd been bled dry. The minute I said trust account violations, she sat up straighter. "Do you have proof?" she asked. I slid the signed contracts across the counter. "This is more than proof. It's a blueprint of how he does business." She promised a fast-track hearing. Monday morning, 9 a.m. From there, I called Piper Lane at the Gazette. She'd been sniffing around this story for weeks. Now I was giving her the final piece, a photo of those slabs sweating under the tarp, time-stamped, paired with supplier records proving they'd never been paid for. Run it clean, I told her. No fluff, just the truth. At 10 o'clock, I met Mrs. Delaney and Mr. Ortiz at Annie's Diner. They brought their paperwork like soldiers bringing evidence to a war tribunal. Mrs. Delaney had neat folders, every receipt in order. Ortiz had a battered shoebox full of invoices and unanswered emails. "He told me the granite was delayed," Mrs. Delaney said, tapping an invoice marked paid in red. Turns out, the supplier never saw a dime. "He said my deposit was non-refundable," Ortiz added. Guess what? My contract doesn't say that anywhere. I left the diner knowing the board would eat those stories alive. Ethan's business wasn't just crooked, it was collapsing in real time. By noon, I was at the storage facility with Detective Morales. She'd gotten the go-ahead from the property owner to open Ethan's unit for non-payment. Inside, the place was a graveyard of unfinished jobs, doors still in plastic wrap, tools with other men's initials scratched off, a tote full of checks meant for suppliers that never got delivered. "This is it," Morales said quietly. "If these were supposed to go through a trust account, he's in felony territory." Movement caught my eye. Ethan, hoodie up, hat low, walking toward us. He froze when he saw Morales, but his eyes locked on me. "You," he said, his voice flat. Morales stepped in front. "Mr. Pike, we're investigating. You need to leave." He smiled that thin, feral smile. "Guess I'll see you around." I didn't respond. I just watched him walk away. By late afternoon, the hearing was confirmed, Piper's story was scheduled to drop Sunday night, and the stone supplier had filed a lien on his last project. Everything was in motion. All I had to do was let gravity do its work. But Ethan wasn't the type to go quietly. Just after dark, Mrs. Delaney called, her voice shaking. "He's in my yard. He's loading the slabs onto his truck. Lock your door." "I'm calling Morales," I said. I was already driving when Morales answered. "We're on our way," she told me. "Don't engage." Her cruiser arrived seconds after I did, sliding into the cul-de-sac with lights flashing. Ethan stood by the truck, his hands on the stone. "Leave it," I said from the sidewalk. He turned slowly. "This is mine. I've got a receipt." "Your receipt doesn't match the paid invoice," I told him. He took a step toward me, but Morales' voice cut through the night. "Hands where I can see them, Ethan." For a long second, he didn't move. Then he laughed, that hollow, mocking laugh I'd heard before. He put his hands up and backed away, letting the slabs sit where they were. As Morales walked him to the cruiser, he craned his neck toward me. His lips moved, but I didn't need to hear the sound to read the words. "See you Monday." I thought that was the end of it for the night. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo. It was grainy, but clear enough, Tessa's car, parked in the church lot where she'd been staying. Underneath, 3 words, nice safe house. The rain had just started again, but it didn't matter. I was already cold. The text sat on my screen, glowing like an open flame in a dry forest. Nice safe house. I read it twice, then again, forcing myself not to slam my thumb into the callback button. Ethan wanted me rattled. He wanted me to chase shadows and burn through my own patience. But if that photo meant what I thought it meant, this wasn't just intimidation anymore, it was trespass. I called Tessa first. She picked up on the second ring, her voice groggy. "Dad? It's late. Are you at the church?" "Yeah, why?" "Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone." Her silence told me she understood something had shifted. "Is it him?" "Just lock up," I said. "I'll explain when I get there." I was halfway across town in under 8 minutes, headlights carving the wet streets into strips of white. The parsonage sat quiet under the rain, the glow of the kitchen light the only sign of life. I circled the block before pulling in. No strange cars, no figures in the shadows. But the feeling that tight wire across my ribs didn't ease. Tessa met me at the door, hoodie zipped, phone in her hand. "What's going on?" I showed her the photo. Her eyes widened, and she swore under her breath. "Did you tell anyone where you were staying?" I asked. She shook her head. "Only Pastor Williams." And he wouldn't. She stopped herself. "No, he wouldn't." I stepped inside and locked the deadbolt behind me. "This means he's been here, Tess. He's not just pushing back on the business stuff. He's making it personal." Her face paled. "Then what do we do?" I didn't want to tell her the truth, that the safest move for her might be to leave town until Monday's hearing was over. But she was my daughter. She had my stubbornness, for better or worse. "I'm not running," she said before I could say it. "You taught me not to let people like him win." I took a long breath, rubbing my thumb over the edge of my phone. "Then we turn his own tactic against him. But it means baiting him, making him think he's still got the upper hand." "How?" "You'll see. Underscore 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 the next morning. I made 2 calls. One to Morales, one to Piper. Morales didn't like my plan, but she couldn't argue with the logic. Piper, well, reporters love a setup. By noon, a post went up on the Gazette's Facebook page teasing their Sunday story on Ethan. We made sure it mentioned not just the hearing, but a private meeting scheduled between Ethan and one of his accusers that would take place Sunday evening at the Ridgeview Coffee Depot. Total fiction. There was no meeting, but it was bait soaked in gasoline. If Ethan was watching, and I knew he'd see it as a shot to corner someone before the hearing. And if I was right, he'd take it. Underscore 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 Sunday evening. The Coffee Depot parking lot was dim except for one flickering lamppost. Morales unmarked sat 2 spaces down from my truck, her partner in the passenger seat. Across the street, Piper sat in her own car with a camera, lens trained on the entrance. 5 minutes past 7, Ethan rolled in. His truck eased into a space at the far corner, engine idling, headlights cutting across the rain-slick pavement. He didn't get out. Instead, he texted me, "You hiding inside?" I stared at the screen, let a full 30 seconds pass, then typed back, "Come in and see." I watched him through the reflection in my side mirror. He opened the door, stepped into the rain, and started toward the entrance. He never made it inside. Morales was out of her car before his second step hit the ground. "Evening, Mr. Pike," she called, badge in hand. "Care to explain why you've been sending photos of a protected address to a witness in an open investigation?" His body stiffened, but his mouth moved faster than his brain. What are you? We have the messages, Ethan, she said. And now we have you here, in violation of a standing order to avoid contact with complainants. His eyes flicked toward my truck. For the first time, I saw something close to panic flash there. You set me up. I opened my door and stepped into the rain. You made it easy. He didn't get arrested that night. Morales took him in for questioning, and he walked out before midnight, but now everything was on record. The intimidation, the trespassing, the photo of Tessa's car. It was all part of the file. And I knew something he didn't. That file was exactly what the licensing board chair had asked to see before Monday's hearing. As I drove home, I caught myself gripping the wheel too hard. The revenge I'd started for business reasons had now shifted entirely. Monday wasn't just about stripping Ethan's license. It was about making sure he could never get close enough to threaten my daughter again. They called his name, and Ethan Pike walked to the center of the room like a man stepping into his own shadow. No smirk, no swagger, just a stiff jaw and eyes that wouldn't land anywhere for too long. We were in a bland municipal hearing room in Billings, beige walls, buzzing lights, and the kind of carpet that swallows sound. But today, it might as well have been a courtroom. I sat 2 rows back, hands resting flat on my knees. Tessa was beside me. Detective Morales flanked my other side, calm as stone. Across the aisle, Piper had her notebook ready, the tiny red recording light hidden under her tote. The board chair, a woman whose voice could cut glass, looked over her reading glasses. Mr. Pike, this is your chance to speak. He cleared his throat. This whole thing's been blown out of proportion. I almost smiled. Even here, with his career dangling by a thread, Ethan still thought he could shrink the truth until it fit in his pocket. Morales went first. She slid a folder onto the table neat, then deadly. Inside, photos of Tessa's car outside the safe house. A timestamp matching Ethan's phone ping from the same block. Copies of inflated invoices, fake permit numbers, lien waivers he'd bullied out of subcontractors. And then the bank records, the ones showing client funds funneled through his business account into a personal account, then withdrawn at a casino. Intimidation. Forgery. Misappropriation of funds, Morales said. This is not a misunderstanding. Ethan's young lawyer shifted in her seat, clearly realizing she was defending a sinking ship. When they called me, I kept my voice steady. I built homes with a handshake, I told the board. I thought that meant something. Mr. Pike thinks a handshake is just a way to get your guard down. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. Good. The questions from the board were surgical. Permit fraud. Phantom charges. Threats. Ethan's answers got shorter. Then they stopped coming at all. Finally, the chair read the verdict. License revoked. No reapplication for 5 years. Full restitution required. Referral to the county attorney for criminal review. The room went silent. For once, Ethan had nothing left to say. Outside, the cold air bit through my jacket. Tessa tilted her face toward the pale Montana sun. It's over, she asked. For him, I said. For us, it's just starting again, without looking over our shoulders. Down the steps, Ethan emerged with his lawyer. He headed for his truck, only to stop dead when he saw the bright orange boot locked on his tire. Code enforcement doesn't miss their moment. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. Tessa and I walked away. Piper caught up, promising to keep her piece clean of addresses and personal details. Morales gave me a nod, the kind men give when the work's been done right. We ended up at a diner 3 blocks away, the kind with 4 mica tables and pie that tastes like somebody's grandmother still bakes it. Over cherry for her and apple for me, Tessa reached across the table. You did it, Dad. No, I said. We did it. The boring, honest way. That's how you beat a man like him. Outside, the sun was breaking through the clouds. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. Normally, that would have tightened my gut. Heard about the hearing. My parents need a porch fixed before spring. Fair price and a handshake work for us, if it still works for you. It does. Always did. I slid the phone back in my pocket and looked at my daughter. Let's go home, I said. Which one? She asked, smiling. The one with the table we haven't built yet. And for the first time in a long while, I knew exactly where I belonged. The table would be strong, solid oak, built to last, just like we would.